Welcome everyone to the second video in our series. The team at Heinemann and Grace Educational Resources is thrilled that you've chosen the Level Literacy Intervention, or LLI, to help provide a tremendous boost to your second grade readers. I want to let you know that this is an overview video, and then we'll have 7 additional segments, each one digging deeper into one of the components of the intervention. You'll want to gather some things in order to be prepared for the next set of videos. Please make sure that you have your materials from the first webinar, especially the blue sampler that is there for you to guide you through some of the most important components of the LLI lesson. Secondly, you'll want to look at the documents that we've posted online and download those documents so that you have them handy as we talk about each component of the lesson. Next, you'll want to have your blue kit handy, especially these 2 pieces. Your copy of When Readers Struggle, which is the professional text that's included in the LLI kit, and your 2 lesson guidebooks. This is the first guidebook. They're the spiral-bound books that describe each of the 120 lessons in the blue intervention. Once you've gathered your materials, we'll start going through the following 7 webinars. We're going to talk about creating groups. We'll do an overview of the complete intervention window, the 60 or 90 minutes that you're working with students. Then we'll take a look at those individual components, the LLI lesson, the independent work, and for those of you doing a 60-minute intervention, what the interactive read aloud will look like for the whole group at the close of that lesson. Then we'll have a brief wrap-up at the end. This next set of videos is really meant to help you get into the weeds of planning your intervention time with your students. Thank you again from the whole team at Heinemann and at Grace Educational Resources. One last reminder, we've set up a email address so that if you have questions at any time, one of us will pop online and be able to answer them for you. That email address, which you'll now see at the bottom of the screen underneath me as well, is readyreadersLLI@gmail.com. You'll see it there again, but it's readyreadersLLI@gmail.com. Our next video is on creating groups. This second segment is about creating the groups for the intervention. You've already read in the blue sampler that LLI is systemic, intensive, and that the lessons are fast-paced. In order to get great results, you want to think very carefully about the level of the readers and how you group them. You'll be able to choose what level to start at once you create those groups, and by using the lesson guide, you'll know exactly what level each cluster of lessons starts at. So the guide becomes very easy to use after you've done the grouping. Now, I've created some sets of what it might look like to have 8 readers, and this is what we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about. I'll start with sort of our dream scenario first, and that's that the 8 readers that are receiving the intervention naturally cluster themselves around 2 different levels. So in this first scenario, I've got a group of readers that are all at level E, and they'd start at lesson 21 because that's the first E level lesson. And I have a second group of readers who are all at F except for this last student who's a G. And even though in a perfect world I wouldn't want to mix levels, we know that we have to make sacrifices, and for these 30 lessons we'll start this cohort of students at the first level F lesson, which is lesson 31. Let me go through another scenario where our students are reading at 3 different levels. So in this case, I have 2 students reading at the lower level, level E. This time, I have 2 students reading at the highest level, level G. So I'm waiting to place my 4 middle students. They're all at level F. And this is another opportunity for us to use our background knowledge and what we know about these students. Again, it's really careful to consider the background information that you have about them and think whether or not you can place 2 or 3 of these F students up here with the E's, knowing that the E's are going to push up to F's, or that these F's need to be clustered as with E's at their starting place, and this strongest reader would be down here creating an FG group, and this cohort would be starting at level G. This is where your background knowledge and information as a teacher comes into play. You know these students, you have data and information about them from TRC, perhaps from MAP for primary grades, and even their middle of year MAP scores from the NWEA assessment. You'll want to use some of that data to help you make great decisions about how to group the kids. I bet you're noticing that I have a group of 5 and a group of 3 here, slightly imbalanced from the 4 and 4. We know that life in schools is never perfect. Ideally, we are looking for this 4 and 4 scenario as the ideal way to group the kids, but we know that you'll use your good teacher smarts in order to create the clusters that make the best sense. The most important thing is that the kids are in 2 groups and you've done the best job you can clustering the needs of those readers so that your lessons can be systemic and intensive, organized around the reading levels of your students. I've saved the hardest scenario for last, and that's where our readers are at 4 different reading levels. Now, of course, this student who's still reading at a level C in 2nd grade by themselves may not be a great candidate for this intervention. But in case they are, let's go ahead and put them in our first group and put these 2 Fs down here in our second group, because we know that we'll want to spread out our most struggling with our slightly stronger readers. Now we have these 5 readers left. Just as you heard in the last example, what we'll likely do is end up grouping these 3 kids. We'll have to decide, are we going to push this C into starting at the D lesson, or is it going to benefit these Ds to start slightly lower? Hopefully we can give this C some incredibly strong doses of instruction to help them make the kind of progress they need to make, because that little one's still reading at a kindergarten level, and we know we're really going to want to boost them through this intervention. Then these E's are left, and again, we may have a model where we have slightly imbalanced groups. Fountas and Pinnell prefer that we keep it at 4 and 4, but this may end up happening. So we've got our C's here and our EF cluster here. But again, looking carefully at your E's, deciding if this cohort's starting at D because you're pushing the C, would one of these E's benefit from starting at that D level, giving you that ideal 4 and 4 for the lesson? That's a little bit of information about how you might group. Remember that you're taking your TRC information, you're taking your background knowledge of these students, what you know about them as readers, what you know about their background, and you're making great decisions based on the strongest way to cluster your group of 8 into cohorts of 4 to create the 2 groups for the reading intervention. Now, in our next videos, we're going to hear a bit more about what that 30 minutes of LLI looks like and the 30 minutes of independent work. Once your students are grouped, we'll be organizing the time during that 60 or 90 minutes in a way that works in a powerful way for their reading instruction. Welcome to our 3rd video segment. I'm going to talk more now about the intervention lesson framework. You have this handout in your materials, and it'll be helpful for you to grab this now so that you'll be able to follow the details as I talk us through them. Most of you will be working with your 2 groups of students over 60 minutes. We've divided that 60 minutes into 2 30-minute segments for the lesson. One group of students will be participating in either their even or odd LLI lesson. They'll have the full lesson from you during that time. Your second group of students, while you're working with your LLI group, will be doing independent work. As you can see from the handout, we've developed some ideas of what that independent work might look like. We'll get into the details of that in one of the upcoming segments. Then you'll have a transition time. Your group 1 students will then have their independent work time, and your group 2 students will have their LLI lesson with you. Remember, you'll go through the lessons in order, so each group is either in their even or odd lesson. You'll follow the lesson structure very carefully during that group's time with you. For those of you lucky enough to be working with your students for 90 minutes, we've added a third 30-minute block to this schedule. We're calling this whole group interactive read aloud. And again, those 90-minute teachers will have all 3 of these 30-minute blocks to complete their schedule. Again, there'll be a segment that goes through the details of that interactive read aloud time, but briefly so that you have a strong sense, what you're going to be doing is using the second grade on-level resources and pages from When Readers Struggle that dig deeply into the reading comprehension that's needed to be a strong second grade reader. That will help you as a teacher prepare for that interactive read aloud in a way that doesn't have a ton of burden. And a lot of the prompts that you'll use during that time are right here in When Readers Struggle. So that is an overview of the 60 and 90-minute segments. Our next 3 segments of our video will be overviewing the LLI lesson, overviewing the independent work time, and digging more deeply into the whole group interactive read aloud. This segment is going to take us into preparing and organizing for the LLI lesson. Remember that each of you is going to teach 2 LLI lessons, 1 to each of your groups, over the course of the 60-minute intervention or 90-minute intervention if you have those additional 30 minutes. The first thing I'm going to remind us of is that you want to find the starting lesson for each of your groups. All students are going to start on an odd number lesson, and Lesson Guide 1 is the likely book you'll use for starting your planning. Remember that all of these lessons are also online. I'll provide that link at the end of this video so you can tap into that online resource as well. But you'll follow the tabs. Remember your D groups, you find the D tab, start at lesson 11. It's a very simple structure for helping you dig in to what we've already described as intensive and fast-paced reading lessons. Next is preparing your materials and copying that you'll need for LLI in general. I'll talk about specific lessons in a moment. We prepared a structure for you, a handout, that gives you all of the information you need called LLI Materials Support. But there are a few things that I really want to highlight. Some of those are the vowel book and the poetry book. These are 2 things that you'll want to copy for every one of your students. You'll want this ready to go throughout the course of the intervention, no matter which group they're in, and that's an advanced planning in general for all of the LLI groups. You're also going to want to prepare the alphabet linking chart, the consonant cluster chart, and the daily materials that you'll need. In the LLI Materials Support handout, you'll see the list of materials that are needed, and in case it's necessary, some suggested substitutions. As you know, preparation is so key to any intervention's success, and we know that by being well prepared for these lessons, we'll be able to help students not only love that experience, but feel successful as readers because you'll have everything you need. Before each lesson, and lots of teachers like to plan a week in advance, you'll want to prepare your materials and copying for the set of lessons you'll be doing that week. Of course, that will always include pulling the colored books that you need for that lesson, and those will include the new texts which are at students' instructional level and some of the familiar texts which are at their independent level and which you've already introduced to them. Oftentimes you'll also be getting the letter cards together or word cards together that you'll want to cut out and organize in a way that makes good sense for you. We've provided the LLI Materials Support document so that if there are pieces of the preparation that you don't have handy at your school, you've got some suggestions for substitutions in order to help you implement the intervention with the strong fidelity that we know will result in good outcomes for our students. I want to say a quick thing about following the lesson guide. Fountas and Pinnell and the team of researchers and writers at Heinemann have done an excellent job of choosing texts and organizing them and the lessons for excellent student support and excellent teacher support. Use a timer, I know, your watch or an actual kitchen timer, and follow that lesson guide and the suggested 30-minute routine. Don't let things drag on too long. That quick pacing that's involved in the LLI intervention is meant to get great results for kids. So we strongly encourage you to use that 30-minute window to do as much intensive teaching as you can. Finally, a word about homework, the take-home books, the black and white books that are included with each lesson. These are a wonderful resource, and we invite you and the teachers in your school who are involved in the intervention to make a good decision about how take-home books and the homework routines that are included in LLI are implemented in your building. You'll have take-home bags, the opportunity to copy the parent letters and fold sheets that are involved in every single LLI lesson. Perhaps that will become material for the independent work time. Perhaps that's something that you will send home as homework. I just encourage you to make a good decision about how much time you have in order to plan the work that needs to be done to copy those materials. And every moment that you are able to invest in that homework piece will pay off for your young readers. Teachers, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the 30 minutes of independent work time. You've already invested 30 minutes in these students, helping them with their reading through the LLI lesson. Now, each of your groups is also going to have 30 minutes of independent work time, where it's incredibly important that you choose activities that you think are going to be high success for them, that we prepare the materials so that kids don't need to bother you, and so that you can work with your LLI students while your other 4 students work independently, and that we talk a little bit about the routines that will help set your students up for success. Some of you may know the students in your LLI intervention incredibly well, while others may be teaching second graders that they don't know as well. So we'll spend a minute on routines. First, I want to talk about choosing activities for this independent work time. We've made some assumptions, and you've got your intervention lesson framework document, that there are some clusters of things that students should be able to do independently. 1 is word study games. 2 is working with high frequency words. 3 is rereading familiar texts that they can read at their independent level. And also doing the independent work that's suggested at the end of each LLI lesson. Some schools may be sending that home as homework. Others may find that that's the perfect thing for students to work on during independent work time. For the 30 minutes, we've suggested that you divide it in to 2, 3, or 4 chunks so that kids are working in a 6 to 10 minute segment that sets them up for real success. The same way you may be using a timer during your LLI lesson, students may be using a timer to direct their time during the independent work time. So let me dig a little more deeply into those suggested activities and talk about preparing materials. First, I'm going to talk about word study games. We've included the directions for lotto and concentration in a packet that's called Independent Work Materials. That includes word cards for concentration, which is a matching game, lotto boards and lotto cards, so kids can practice with some of the words from the stories and high frequency words. But you should feel free to add favorite games. I've got bananagrams here, which is a favorite with kids that are early readers, to help them build words in a crossword puzzle-like way. So word study games is something that you can actually teach the routine for and help kids play in partners and have some of that social aspect that we know can make the intervention successful. Second, we've suggested some work with high-frequency words. We've got the list of 50 high-frequency words and 100 high-frequency words in your packet. You can have kids build those words with letter cards. They can practice writing them on dry erase boards, or even something as simple as index cards and having multicolored markers so that they're really enjoying the opportunity to write those all-important high-frequency words again and again. This is a more independent activity, something a student can do by his or herself in order to dig in to 6 or 7 minutes of hard work writing and reading high-frequency words. I also want to recommend that this is a perfect opportunity to use the poetry book or the take-home reading books that come as part of your LLI intervention for independent reading of familiar text. Another great activity for independent work time. By putting those materials in a basket and carefully organizing students to spend time reading either on their own or with partners. It gives kids an opportunity for practicing fluent reading at text that is high success for them. Lastly, you know that at the end of every LLI lesson, there's some suggestions for independent work. Oftentimes that's rooted in using the take-home book, but you've also got the fold-over sheet and the parent letter that's there. That provides some really explicit directions for some reading and writing that kids can do on their own. You may also have some favorite activities that your students know how to use independently. We welcome you using those materials. The important thing is that kids can work on their own. Lastly, I want to talk about the routines that will make independent work time successful. This is a very small group of kids, just 4. So as you're grouping your 2 groups for your 8-child intervention, you may want to consider giving each group a team name, asking kids for their ideas about how to be successful during independent work time, brainstorming with them in the first days what they might do if they run into a problem with their partner or they have a question during independent work time. Help kids anticipate how they can solve problems on their own and the routines you'd like them to use, whether it's the taking out of materials or the cleanup of materials, keeping things organized that will help make this intervention successful. The thinking you can do on the front end of considering these routines will pay off and allow your students to work independently during this block of time. For those of you that are lucky to have a 90-minute intervention block, we're here to give a little bit of advice on how to use those 30 minutes for interactive read aloud. This would be the opportunity for you to model phrased, fluent reading for these 2nd graders. We're suggesting that this be done in a whole group at the end of the LLI and independent work time switch. So this would be the last 30 minutes of your time together. That way kids can use the bulk of their brain power at the start of your lesson time. Now, we've made some very clear recommendations for this time as well. The first is that we're suggesting that you start at the end lesson at number 20, which is a level N book, Animals with Wings. By starting at the end of the kit, the books at the end of the kit for the interactive read aloud, it's going to allow you to expose kids to grade level text. Now, you may decide that Animals with Wings is not the best starting book. Just look at that cluster of books at the end of 120 and work your way down through those texts. That way you'll be going through the N, the M, and then the L books and ensuring that each day kids are receiving some 2nd grade text experiences through that interactive read aloud. Over the course of the 30 days, you'll be able to get through at least 18 to 20 texts. Some of you may be able to get through even more. The next thing you'll need to do after choosing the text is to plan the student talk. There are some excellent resources in the professional text that's in your LLI kit. This is When Readers Struggle, the professional text that's a part of the book, but I've pulled out just a few pages here, pages 428, 429, and 430. These are the prompts for successful comprehension. As you know, LLI is not just about creating readers who can decode, but it's creating readers who can understand and talk about their learning. Well, during interactive read aloud, that time provides a perfect opportunity for you to organize turn-in talks, to model your thinking, to have some whole group conversations, remembering that that group is very small, only 8 kids. Some of you, it might even be smaller. So this is an opportunity for you to dig deeper into some of those probing comprehension skills like synthesizing, inferring, and analyzing that we know kids are going to be asked to be able to be on grade level with those skills multiple times in their experiences. Well, by using the prompts that are in When Readers Struggle, you'll have a ready-made tool for building those kinds of questions into your interactive read aloud. In addition, you'll be able to use the lesson guide as well because it contains prompts and ideas for having comprehension conversations with all those books all the way up through level 20. So with those resources, we think it will be quite easy for you to pick up that book, skim through the plan, look at the prompts, and be ready to lead your students through a great conversation and read aloud. Lastly, I want to remind everyone that this should be one of the most enjoyable times. This is a time for kids to share and show what they've been learning, where you're helping them navigate the text with more support, modeling that phrase fluent reading. They're going to see some of their favorite characters in these books as well. Sam and Jesse and Mooseling, who are part of the series. They'll also be exposed to some additional classic tales and some texts in the All About Nonfiction series. And they'll see how excited you are about those kinds of texts. That'll play off right into the work that they're doing in LLI lessons as well. Thank you, teachers. You've now completed the second video in training for implementing the LLI intervention for Ready Readers here in Chicago. We are grateful that you're joining us in this work and want to make sure you know that you can email us at readyreaderslli@gmail.com. Every and any question is incredibly welcomed, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Just in brief overview, we've had several segments. We've talked about grouping. We've talked about the 60 and 90-minute blocks, then we dug deep into the LLI intervention, what happens during independent reading, and of course, for those of you with those 30 minutes, added some information about interactive read aloud time. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident when you go to open those blue LLI kits and start working directly with second graders. But we know we haven't answered every question. There might even be things we've forgotten. That's why we're excited to stay in touch, both electronically and via other training opportunities that we'll be getting to you and to your principal over the next 4 to 5 days. You'll be hearing from us via email, faxes, and other communications with your schools so that you know that you are empowered to make sure that this intervention touches those second graders in great ways, that they are going to become super readers thanks to your extra energy and effort to support them. Thank you.